I'm not a clinician. I don't come from a regulatory background. I don't come from a traditional healthcare background. But figuring out how to navigate and be part of this healthcare, life sciences community is, I think, one of the biggest opportunities, frankly, in Houston.
You're tuning in to another episode of Forging the Future. And today I'd like to welcome John Reale. John is the Managing Director of Integr8d Capital and the Venture Lead for the Texas Medical Center Venture Fund. JR, welcome to the show.
Chris, thank you. And happy belated birthday.
Oh, well, thank you. I've started my 6th decade, and
I get to spend it with you.
Yeah, I know. My first day of the 6th decade.
Sorry, it all gets better from here.
I have the honor of interviewing you on the show today, so thank you.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about your story. Actually, I didn't know you came from New York.
No, I was guilty as charged. I was born in New York. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. We moved to Staten Island, New York when I was very young.
Oh, wow.
I grew up in Staten Island. I've got 2 great parents. My sister is about, I think, 16 or 18 months younger than me. My brother is almost 11 years younger than me.
A big gap.
Big gap. Great family. Very lucky. But I grew up in New York and then went to school up in Boston, went back to New York, and then I actually moved here on my 24th birthday.
Oh, really?
Which was 2000, so I'll be 47 this year. But yeah, that's the story.
Nice. You had a nice view of Lady Liberty from Staten Island.
You know, I'd say like Staten Island, unfortunately, isn't known for all these exotic things. It's known for the great food, but there's also this massive landfill that folks would talk about. It was like the largest landfill.
I always thought they said that's on the New Jersey side or something like that, but no?
So part of the Staten Island story. But no, I was very, very fortunate. I grew up in a great neighborhood with great parents and learned a lot of great things. I also was lucky because my grandparents, my mother's parents, moved around the corner from us when I was about 10 years old, I think, which was really lucky to have that experience.
Grandparents around the corner?
Yeah.
Nice. What's not to like, right?
It was special.
And you started out, as like most entrepreneurs, you had first job. What was that?
So our first job was me and one of my neighbors. We were classmates. We bought a newspaper out. The Staten Island Advance.
Oh, wait, you bought a newspaper?
So we bought it from another, kid in the neighborhood. I think he got to the age where now I don't remember all the details, but let's say he was in high school.
He was aging out.
he was aging out where he had better things to do.
And how old were you when you were buying?
I think we were like 12 or 13, something like that.
And how much would it cost to buy a newspaper like that?
That's a great question. It's probably felt like $1 million at the time, but we got this route. We delivered Joe Gagliardi. He was my neighbor, lived across the street, and we would like alternate days. We would take different parts of the route.
Did you have to get up like at 5 a.m. and
get up early on the
your
weekends
bike and throw the papers?
We'd have like a newspaper, like a shopping cart from like a grocery store. Pack up all the papers, throw them, or put them in mailboxes.
Nice.
And do that, but the story in there is. We learned, my other neighbors delivered the New York Daily News, and we would go, so this is way back, right? So this is like the 80s, early 90s. We would go collecting. There wasn't no Venmo or anything like that, so we'd ring bells, and we would try to sell each other's newspapers, and we'd find odd jobs to do for our customers. We learned about upselling. We would clean pools. We would wash cars.
You were a hustler from the beginning.
Yeah. They're interesting lessons to look back on and realize how prevalent some of those things are.
Well, one of the things that we're sponsoring at our Chili Showdown event is lemonade.
When's that?
Stand.
When is the Chili Showdown?
It's the last day of the tech rodeo.
Awesome.
It's the NCAP event, so we're trying to raise some money for budding entrepreneurs.
Awesome.
So And then you got into finance somehow.
Yeah. So, again, this was growing up. So I went to high school in Staten Island. And when I didn't go to work, originally I had worked for one of my uncles doing side job. He was in construction. I did that maybe for about 2 or 3 weeks and realized that wasn't for me. But I had another uncle who had a trading company in the World Trade Center in the COMEX. So we trade gold and silver options and futures. And so I was lucky enough that he let me work for him. And I would go to the World Trade Center whenever during the summer when I wasn't in school. And, that helped develop a real interest in financial markets.
How old were you when you were going to the World Trade Center?
So I think I was like 16, 15, something like that.
Was that intimidating? I mean, those were like the tallest buildings in the world. You're walking up, going in, very professional. Did you have to put on a suit or what floor did you go up? Or what were you doing there?
So where everything was being traded, it's like an open outcry system. So these traders, brokers would be in a pit and they would be trading amongst each other, either for their own book or for other customers. It was really fun. And actually I learned a lot, so super grateful for my uncle, but also for all of the people there. It's mainly like younger guys, let's say like in their 20s or 30s. And a lot of them, a bunch of them didn't go to college or so. So I remember like having conversations about the future and I was thinking about going to school and they were like, you need to go. You should go and go far away and do all these things. So, again, like all these like subtle little lessons along the way. But it was just really fascinating, Chris, to see
seems like it.
Here's, if you ever remember the movie Trading Places?
Yeah, sure.
So that took place on that trading floor.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's kind of what it looked like.
Very dynamic, busy.
People talking with their hands, communicating with folks on the phone and relaying information in this really busy, crazy type environment. And it was exciting. And like I had again, my job was to run tickets. It was to punch them into the computer. It was to smuggle sandwiches on the floor. So folks would want to buy lunch, and
you were selling them sandwiches.
Yeah, actually, one of my uncle's other nephews, he was like the king of doing so. He'd put this coat on, he'd get all these sandwiches, and I could resell.
Hey buddy, you want to buy a sandwich?
It was a big business for a young person on the floor. Supply and demand, people had to be on the floor,
right?
So to go out and be able to bring something in was.
I'm sure those guys loved it. They didn't have to go anywhere. They were hungry.
It was exciting. It was very, I would say like maybe different than a lot of folks at that age.
So did you leave New York then to come to Houston to go to school, or how did you get here?
I got sentenced to Houston. I was
Sentenced.
2 years. Again, you're growing up, you're on Wall Street, and what I realized I wanted to do was be on a trading team, a sales team. I want to be managing money for our clients. And I was in this technology group. So short story was I started to learn, I spent some time with the developers and figured out how to automate a bunch of work. So this is in the 90s, like late 90s, and just realized, hey, we could automate a bunch of the work. And I wanted to get myself out of a job thinking I'll either get fired or get an opportunity to go work on another team, and was fortunate that worked out. Moved to Houston on my 24th birthday. Actually, on my birthday.
For Morgan Stanley then?
So I was at Morgan Stanley. Yeah, I got recruited by a team here.
Oh, okay.
And started working with them, which was a big change in my life. It was a great opportunity, and I was really lucky. The people I worked for, they pushed us hard. I learned a lot. They're just great people, and I'd say one of my big lessons is the importance of who you work for versus maybe what you're doing. And I was lucky. So came down, was working with this guy, Willie Langston and Kevin Lilly and Robert Gant. These guys recruited me here. And then we wound up starting a company in the investment management business.
How long did that take? So after you moved here, it was a couple of years, and then you guys decided to do a startup? Or?
It was about maybe about a year and a half or so. It's like February of 2000, I moved here. We started April of 2001, I believe. So just over a year. And I'll never forget, like again, I'm the junior analyst, guy just worked all the time. And we all resigned. We got in the elevator. We took a office space at our attorney's office for a few months. If you remember, I think it was Allison. It was one of those big storms.
Oh, yeah.
And we were going to have space in the Bank of America building. So we were in the Chase Tower downtown, and that building got flooded. So we were in this temporary office for a few months. But
did they have to talk you into that? I know you were 24, 25.
I'm like 25. Yeah, they were like, Johnny, we're going to start this company. I want you to come with us.
And you're like, I'm in?
Yeah. It's like I came to work with them.
Yeah.
And I learned so much. And so there's just an opportunity to go do it. And I believed in the people. And I think again, it's a great foreshadowing. You look back, that's a great lesson. You follow great people. You look at leaders who could do that. And I was fortunate to work for folks who taught me a lot about myself, a lot about life, a lot about things that were important, but also how to work.
And was that startup successful?
Really successful. I spent another, I think about 3 years with them. Company's grown to be very successful. I think Avalon
That was
Advisors.
The name of the company?
Yeah, Avalon Advisors. I believe it manages about $8 billion or something like that now. Yeah, so I actually ran into one of the guys who moved me down to town 2 weeks ago over breakfast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's great to reflect on.
When did you decide to leave them then?
So it was probably like 2003, 2004, 5. Something. The years all blur. I think we were together about 3-4 years. I think I worked for them for a total of 5 years. Again, I'm making up numbers. I don't remember the time.
Yeah.
But I remember one of the things, they're like, you should go to business school. And at the time, I paid for school. I learned a lot. I was building different parts of the business. And that wasn't the path I wanted to go down. So I went over to the other side of the phones and went over to JP Morgan, where when I left, I was like kind of a junior portfolio manager on a fixed income fund. Before that, one of the things I really enjoyed was an analyst. And I was like, meeting with CEOs and looking at financials and understanding companies and using that to make recommendations and do analysis on what companies, we should be allocating our money.
Yeah.
And so then I went to the other side, to JP Morgan. And then I think like my big breakthrough, Chris, was I realized I don't want to do this. All these years I've been so passionate about the financial markets. What I learned and reflected on at Avalon was how much I enjoyed building different parts of the business, the infrastructure, our first hedge fund, our equity product, our fixed income product. And that part resonated where ultimately left. And then I started down a whole nother path, which was just lots of different turns, frankly, of different types of roles, different people, and, which has ultimately led to where we are today.
So when, after those other roles, how did you get into, first of all, maybe you saw the gap as well in Houston?
Yeah, I'll back up. So just, like that road ultimately led to my first software company. So my first startup was a remarkable failure. Of course, this is you say it out loud.
Huge learning opportunity. That's what you say.
I learned a lot, but it was a remarkable failure. I joined up a bunch of guys who were developing ethanol projects in Brazil. Natural move for a guy who's been on Wall Street. Was really interested and curious. Longer story, maybe for a different day, but it turned out that they weren't the right people. There were some good people. There were some not so great people involved with that project. I learned about people. There's a big theme in my life about learning about people.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that, about the people part.
I think, and this is probably something you probably think about as well as a partner to founders, is how important it is the people that you work with, the people that you want to follow, that you want to follow their vision. You believe in the way they empower you. You believe in the way they do things. I didn't know enough, or maybe I didn't realize enough at the time. After I left Avalon, I really didn't have the mentors in my life to understand some of those things. So I just pursued things. I was curious. I was interested. I was hardworking. So I followed things that I thought were interesting and learned a lot of lessons where I wish maybe I had some other voices, or maybe I wish I knew how to ask for help differently at the time, but I didn't. So I got like expensive MBAs in the school of real life.
Is that part of how you decide on investments now? Is it heavily weighted to the people, or?
I think so. I mean, both of us are early stage, generally seed stage investors. And I think the greatest knowns at a point in time are the people, the way they communicate, the way they think about things, what they do in between when you visit with them, how curious they are. Those are the things, there's a problem that's known. If there's technology involved, you could look at it and understand it, but you're trying to connect the future to something in the present. And maybe the biggest piece there, that if you ultimately believe the people are the plan, then why is this set of founders going to be the gal or guy that other people want to join and follow? So I think about that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of investors have a thesis of, they look for three things: founders, the founding team, and founding team, right?
Yeah.
And there is an interesting stat that one of the most successful cohorts ever that ended up, out of say 5 or 8 companies, there's 3 unicorns, right, in one cohort, right? And it turned out that none of those 3 unicorns were doing the thing that they got into the cohort for.
Right.
Right. They all pivoted during their journey and created different businesses, but they were still, of course, very successful. So it is a balance. Of course, the nirvana part is a great founding team and a great idea, right? It's obvious, but
and great timing. But to your point, the word I like better than pivot is learning, and it's how do people learn. And what do they do with those learnings? How does it help them make better decisions or have realizations and be objective about what did I just learn? I'm trying to unlock this thing. I'm realizing the better question is X. What do I do with it? And I think that's the best predictor, frankly, of the future, by people's ability to learn and take action. There's some things that, like, hey, this is dialed in, you could tweak it, an algorithm.
Yeah.
There's some parts of science you could bend maybe only so far, but how do people learn, and what do they do with those learnings? And how do they empower other folks to do the same? How do they create organizations that learn at a high level and allow a lot of decision-making to take place?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with that. And if you look at the companies that have been successful, well, first of all, I mean, with startup founders, everyone talks about tenacity and grit and, keeping on with the, hey, we got to make this work. But at some point you have to realize, well, it might not be that thing.
Yeah, I think so. One thing that we learned through that is, at Integr8d, we have a portfolio company called QuotaPath. AJ.
I'm an investor, yeah.
And one of the things that AJ introduced to us was this idea of a weekly report. And one of the things that we found from that construct is, wow, this is a place to share what you're learning and share it at scale, and share it really as a management technique with your people, but also how you build a movement as a founder. So if you could share what you're learning, share it with your team, share it with your co-founders, share it with your investors, share it with advisors, that's a great way to ultimately create space to think strategically, but also share what you're learning and allow other folks to understand or help in different ways. So that's something I'd say like we've incorporated, think about a lot, and help to say, hey, if you're trying to build a learning culture, here's a way to do so. It doesn't have to be a marketing report. I strongly dislike the newsletters that feel like here's a marketing report to someone versus here's what we're learning. Here's what we're seeing, and here's how it's forcing us to ask different questions or think about our course of action.
Interesting. How did Station Houston actually start? How did that, seed get planted and you took that on?
I think it's like a boy band story to some extent.
NSYNC or?
Yeah, I don't know what the characters are, but a lot of interesting people involved. And I'd say the way I would best describe it, Chris, is it was a movement. There was a gap. I had just finished working at a couple of different startups. I was working, there's a venture capital firm called FM Capital now. I was working in some of their portfolio companies, and I was generally on the road just about every week for a few years. And when that merry-go-round stopped, I was looking for who am I going to do something with? What am I going to do? And I got involved with like just about every entrepreneurship organization I could. So long member of the Rice Alliance community, wound up getting involved with Ty Houston, became the president for a year of the Indus.
What is Ty?
The Indus Entrepreneurs. It's a historic like Indo-American group.
Okay.
I was looking for all different interesting people to find out what's going on.
Though, really. I mean, back
there wasn't
then.
that much. I mean, I would say like just taking my own medicine and thinking about like being a historian of different problems. If you go back to the evolution of Houston, there's the folks talk about Compact and BMC, but you also had these like really interesting stories. From the Doug Irwins and the Mike Clarks and the Keith Crewers and the Eric Pulaski's and the companies that they were building. So you had like the advent of the Houston Technology Center, probably about 25 years ago, late 90s. And then, really like that was like the thing for a long time. And I think over time, from my perspective, it just became many different things to many different people. It had accelerators, it had incubators, it was doing life science, it was doing aerospace, it was doing energy, it was doing all of these different things. And, I think as at some point, you're doing all these things.
It never looked to me like there was much technology in the Houston Technology Center, but I feel like it was misnamed, but maybe it was at some point. But whenever I went and looked there, it looks like that's not what they were doing. But
yeah, so, so like that broader evolution, I'd say like things that were really important for Houston were, I learned from were both things like Surge, if you remember the energy accelerator,
right.
And then the Red House.
But you're leading the venture fund now at TMC?
Yeah.
And what is that like? What
It's
are you
awesome.
doing down there?
So I was fortunate. 2018, I got the opportunity to spend more time at TMC, mainly through the venture fund. At the time, it was called the investment committee or the advisory board. And then that led to a series of conversations and joined the team. I was working with the team there on the accelerator, and then that turned into working on the venture fund. And that's been, I'd say the thing there comes back to the people. It's really great people at the Texas Medical Center. So I'm really grateful.
You've been there 3-4 years now?
I think it's 4. It's going on 4.
How many investments typically does TMC make, like in a given year?
So I'll tell you about the fund. So we have a $50 million fund from our balance sheet at TMC. And we invest in founders who are building the future of health. We get to know them. We want to work side by side with them. We started out with a $25 million fund, so that predates me. But it was really started because there was a gap in the community, and the board of the Texas Medical Center was, had the vision to help fill that gap. Bill helped launch that. Bill launched that back in, I think, 2017. Bill McKeon, CEO of Texas Medical Center. From there, it's really like catapulted to be this strategic investor to help entrepreneurs access the Texas Medical Center. We work with a lot of different people, and we try to help them think about how they're going to shape the future of healthcare, the future of health, the future of life sciences through accessing, these great institutions, but these amazing people who are part of our community. And, how could they gain insights? How could they run clinical trials? How can they find development opportunities? How can they find customer opportunities in doing so through our community? And it's really awesome. So we have 18 companies in the portfolio right now. Some of them are here in Houston. Some of them are in different parts of the U.S. A couple of them are international.
How do you find them?
We've found so many of them through the programs.
You're reaching out, like outbound, you're finding them, or they're applying?
We're doing more of that. One of the exciting things that's going on at TMC right now with our venture fund is we've been building a team, which is exciting. So as that's growing, we're finding new ways of sourcing, great founders to partner with. Historically, we found so many of them through our health tech accelerator or through our biodesign program. But we've got a deal that we'll announce soon that was part of our TMC community that didn't go through our program, that is just really exciting to partner with a really exciting entrepreneur here, and also of some technology that was spun out of a major strategic. So those things, but really it's about how can we find great founders with a great vision for the future where we could help them unpack how they're going to build that. And I think that's what we try to do. We look at ourselves as partners and take that journey with them. We ultimately put our capital as part of the mechanism to build that partnership, but then really help them think about, hey, how could we help you access this amazing complex and these great people that we have here
in the medical center and otherwise
at TMC.
Mm-hmm. How long are you working with them then? Is that like a couple year process, a 10-year process, a journey, forever?
I mean, one thing in my career, nothing's been forever, but so long as TMC will have me. But it's been a great partnership. I feel like there's so much more to do. I think it's one of the great opportunities. I think my story, I hope, could be something for others in the sense that, here's a person, I'm not a clinician. I don't come from a regulatory background. I don't come from a traditional healthcare background. I don't come from a healthcare background. But figuring out how to navigate and be part of this healthcare, life sciences community is, I think, one of the biggest opportunities, frankly, in Houston and for people, because I think one of the interesting parts about healthcare is it touches us all. Right? Whether it's the disease, it's our loved ones, it's our own personal health, but there's also this role that it's going to play in the future of our economy here. We're seeing it through the investments we're making through Helix Park, which will be this new center to commercialize and translate research out of our institutions. This is going to be a major accelerant. We think about the role of biomanufacturing and what that will play, not only in Houston, but the world, and the role that and the opportunity that Houston has to play in that. These are all things that we're working on, that we're building. There's physical buildings that are going up that will be open next year.
I like the design of the DNA. This is the one with
the DNA necklace,
going through the middle.
It's super cool.
Yeah.
And I think of it as like a place that's really going to unlock so many things and open up even more paths for this global city to find even more paths and do more things. And I think that's going to be one of the greatest opportunities to have impact, to make impact, and to participate in that impact here in Houston.
Yeah. As part of that opportunity, I mean, how do you facilitate that more than you are now?
Well, I think the way I would encourage people, and what we do is encourage them to be curious and figure out, like, hey, how can you participate? Where are some of these different programs? And think about, if you are someone who's a life learner, there's probably a place to apply like that interest into figuring out those things. And our team over at TMC, we like to think of ourselves as part of that tissue that helps folks connect in and find opportunity. So it's opportunity to co-invest, it's opportunity to go help build, opportunity to go explore what does the healthcare industry mean for us. I mean, I know Aaron from Seats came and talked about how they've been moving their business into healthcare.
Right. What about larger in general besides, med tech, which is super exciting, but, the startup ecosystem in general that everyone's trying to create, right? What are the opportunities there? What else is needed here in Houston in order to make that work? Because I think it's not quite there yet. Right?
Yeah, I'd say one of the things I think about a lot is, so one of the learnings when we were running the task force here for Mayor Turner a bunch of years ago, a lot of that research, was really instructive to this like core point, which is economies thrive when there's more new business. Mm-hmm. Not small business, not big business, but new business. New businesses are being formed. And so like one of the like questions to ask is, well, how do you spur more new business growth and more development there?
Yeah.
And I think like one of the opportunities is to think about, for new businesses to start, what becomes the sustainable partners that are needed to give them foundations to ultimately drive transformation, to become businesses of consequence. And I think that opens up a bunch of questions of, for investors, like, hey, what it becomes sustainable capital and partnerships at that earliest stage. That's a place that we struggle with a lot as a broader community. And that's a big opportunity for folks to think about. Where can they play a role? If you're a former operator, if you've been an investor, where could you apply some of those different things, but where could you could ultimately create some structure so you could build or help partner with founders so they could build a future and you could give them the support and partnership to help in that journey.
So JR, we've known each other for 5+ years now, going all the way back to Station Houston. I'm an investor in Integrated Capital. You're a venture firm. You're doing so much with, first at Station and now at the venture fund at TMC. What else do you see that you're trying to accomplish now? How are you forging the future in 2023? You made Investor of the Year, by the way. Congratulations. I'm coming at you next year, so watch out. But yeah,
I'm rooting for you.
There you go. Let's go. How are you forging the future?
Chris, I think by continuing to focus on learning is like continues to open up the new paths of like what's interesting, where am I curious, where are there opportunities. We talked about the opportunities to be curious around healthcare and life sciences, the opportunities to be curious around how to build in more structure to build sustainability in the ecosystem, both to help but also to participate and how to apply those things. I think a big piece of it is, how do I continue to learn from other folks and, share the things I've learned. I love partnering with founders. That's the thing I've really set my career to do, to help build the future. I wish I had a problem I wanted to solve in a different way. But I think the part there is, really trying to understand what vision an entrepreneur has and continue to get better at my craft and invest in that craft to help pull forward that future to realize it. That's a big mission that I'm on, that we're on to do so. So I think of it like in those terms. There's a lot of stuff that I'm involved in. Learn how to say no better in the future. But I'm also forging the future because I love being a dad and a husband, and there's so many great things that I love participating in that future. But I think a big part of it is just continuing to be an active member of the community and think about the communities where we spend our time. So that's the way I'm thinking about it.
Well, Houston's lucky to have you.
Lucky to have you, Chris.
Well, we're trying, right? And lastly, I like to wear my crazy socks. I've got my Benjamin socks, my $100 socks on.
Wow. I didn't know they were $100 socks.
Yeah, they actually.
I've got my flowery socks on over
here. You talked about what's in these gadget boxes. I actually have something for you today. So
I have something for you too.
Oh, do you? Great.
Yeah. What do we got here?
Got some,
money socks.
Some money socks.
Hold on, wait. Is there money inside?
Nah, you're the money inside. That's what you put on.
Hey, so I've got something for you.
Wow, okay.
As you're celebrating your birthday, this milestone birthday.
Okay.
There's some TMC swag in there.
Oh, nice. Look at that.
I also now know that you're dry or living the dry life.
That's right. Lots of people.
So hopefully you'll just give that to your team.
Well, I have lots of people to share that with. But
happy birthday.
Nice champagne.
And,
thank you very much. And some really cool stuff in here. Well, thank you so much, JR. Wow.
I know you're always giving. You're a give first person.
Yes.
I've watched the show and seen you give socks, so thank you. I'll look forward to wearing these. But I want to give you some gear and also
I'll have to go
spread some birthday cheer.
Will do. Well, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.